What is happening, guys? Welcome back to another episode. Today's video is on the FJ40. This is a restoration that I've been doing for the last 12 months with the help of Angry Dad and Uncle Steve. So this is a 1977 FJ40 Toyota Land Cruiser. This here come out of a little town called Boddington, which is a few hours south of where I live. Basically, it was a workhorse its whole life. So it's been on the farm, had a lot of red dust, a lot of rust. It's very hard to find these cars these days rust-free. You virtually got to find them in the little towns that are very dry country. The reason why I bought this car because everything was there. I didn't really have to source for parts or anything like that. There was obviously some seats and a few bits and pieces that I did have to buy, but everything was there. All the badges were there. The running gear was good, so this was a running car up until now. So it was still licensed, still regoed. The guy that I purchased it from, he had this as a work car for 6-7 years. So everything was running, all the driveline was good. I wanted to bring this up to factory spec just as it come out of the production line. So it's running the factory 6-cylinder 2F engine, which is the petrol version, the 4-speed gearbox, and the drum brakes at the front. This is the original key apparently from 1977. So start her up, we've got to put the choke on and crank her over and then push this in halfway. There we go. Let her warm up and off we go. Now, first thing we did was strip the whole car. It took about a week to strip it, starting from all the panels, getting rid of all the panels, all the interior, making sure that everything was marked, because I've never done a build like this before. This is a really big build. Never done an FJ40 before, so I wanted to make sure everything was marked so I knew exactly how to put it together, and of course these videos were a big help as well. Everything was stripped and removed. We kept everything just in case. Now, the front windscreen I did crack trying to remove it, but all the windows were really good nick, even all the rubbers and seals, so we kept all those. I did end up buying a bolt kit from eBay just so I could put some new bolts in there, because you know, when bolts get old they tend to snap very easily, and I did snap quite a few trying to undo this. Now, once everything was out of the car, we used the Bobcat to lift the FJ40 off the chassis. You can see here the condition of the chassis. It wasn't actually too bad. There was a lot of grass and debris left in the chassis that, you know, has been built up over the last 40 years. So I grabbed the high pressure unit and gave it a good hit. We used this water-based acid wash called Red Raw. It's used up in the mines to get rid of all the red dust. Get the chassis as clean as I could. So basically, once all the chassis was clean and the body, we started stripping it even more, removing all the engine components and boxing all those up so we can remove the engine and remove all the diffs and leaf springs so we can start getting the chassis ready for paint.
Knocking the penny out of the spring. Yeah, look at that.
So here you can see the Bobcat just removing the engine for us and sat aside for now. The engine was in really good nick. It ran well, so I didn't really need to rebuild it. Don't fix something if it's not broke. Clutch and everything was working well. When the diffs and the leaf springs were removed, so we just got the Bobcat and lifted up the chassis and gave it one last clean. But once the chassis was all clean, we used the KBS chassis kit. So it's a 3-step process, and it was a really good product. So you've got step 1, which is the KBS clean. That gets rid of all your contaminants, so like your grease, your dirt, your grime, gets it as clean as it can. Now, step 2 is the KBS blast. So what that does is that gives the paint something to stick to. So this is like a zinc etch coating, so the paint has the best adhesion to the chassis. Once that was done, it was step 3, and that was applying the KBS paint. This is called Rust Seal, and it's really thick and it's self-leveling as well. So you guys can paint it on with either a brush or a paint can, and you just brush it on, and over time it settles down and it all levels out. So thank you to the help of Georgia and Christian for helping me out with that. Once the chassis and the diffs were done, we put it all together and gave it one final coat with like KBS UV protected. So it turns the whole chassis into a matte finish or a satin finish. And what this does is it stops the rust seal breaking down and turning chalky in years to come. So it's actually given the chassis like this little bit of satin color to it. So that is now UV protected. I'm gonna leave it in the sun to bake for an hour or two, and then I'll push it back into the shed and let it fully cure overnight. After using this stuff, I was really impressed with it, so I ended up using this KBS rust seal for most of the build. So we painted like all the steering box and the steering arms and everything with this because I thought it was a really great product. And after looking up some of the reviews, it's really strong and durable as well. So we ended up using that as much as we could. Now with the suspension, I didn't go too crazy. Off eBay, I think the shocks were about 200 bucks.
Hard to push. He's getting there. Yeah, he's got it. Yeah.
Being a fully leaf spring car, I didn't really see the benefits of putting some nice shocks on it, so I ended up just going with those. After the suspension was installed, we ended up cleaning up the engine. We used that red raw stuff to get rid of as much of the contaminants as possible. Now over the years, the engine had, you know, a few leaks. So being out in the bush, it was never clean. So we hit that with the red raw acid wash and the degreaser, and it actually turned out pretty well. So we waited for that to dry overnight, and then we hit it with some heat paint. So we painted the rocket covered in silver and the block in black, and it actually turned out really nice. Once that was cleaned up, we used the Bobcat to sit it back in place, so the chassis was ready to go. Now something I've been dreading since the start of the build was the rust repairs. It's definitely not my forte or something that I've had a lot of time or experience with, but lucky for the old man, he's done plenty of rust repairs and he helped me out majorly with that area. So after the last couple of months, every day he's been in the shed cutting out rust. Basically underneath both the doors were completely gone. The rear seal at the back of the vehicle was gone. A lot of the floor was gone as well. So it was a matter of just slowly cutting out the rusty areas and installing it with brand new material.
This will go back in its place. Tap it in. Pre-drilled all the holes, welded it all, welded it in here, cut the piece out of the corner there today, welded that in, did the other guard here, welded all that in. Where Nick had his beautiful Coke can here, I welded all that in today.
It was actually a baked beans can.
A baked beans can, we'll weld all that in.
Now, if you guys have been watching the build series, you know that we've had a pretty bad run trying to get this car in for sandblasting. Basically everything that was happening around the world at the moment, and everyone being so busy, a lot of people being shut down, it was very hard to get a sandblaster. And towards the end of the build, we ended up sneaking it into my boss's blasting facility, which I'm very grateful for. But everything that we did do rust repair wise was ground back to bare metal and repaired. And after using the sandblaster, we basically got every area that we couldn't get to normally. So we did all the firewall, we did the dash and all the floor, stuff like that with the blaster. But once everything was sandblasted, it's practically bare metal, so we have to get it into a primer. Now we used an epoxy primer, which is a lot stronger, and it's a lot easier to fare down when you start painting it. So anywhere that was high wearing in the vehicle, so inside the cab, underneath, under the guards, under the bonnet, I wanted like that rough texture. First thing we painted was the body itself. So everywhere that was high wearing, I wanted to use the Raptor coating. So I think it's a stronger wearing paint. So we ended up painting all underneath the guards, underneath the bonnet, inside and underneath the cab. And that was quite easy to apply. So you've got your 1 litre bottles, you go down to your paint shop and get them to tint it to the colour of your car. So we colour coded it to the Dune beige colour of the vehicle. You basically fill it up with hardener to where the line is, you shake it up as well as you can, and then you apply it with the provided gun. And you can adjust the texture so you can have it either smoother or rougher depending on the pressure of your air. So once the Raptor coating was done, We painted the rest of the car in just your normal 2-pack color. We ended up using 6 litres for the rest of the car and all the panels. So that was all sanded back and sprayed on inside the booth. We ended up putting 3 to 4 coats on, and that turned out really nicely. The old man was really impressed. He ended up doing it for us. Yeah, really happy with the outcome. It turned out really nice. Once the body was complete, we ended up spraying up all the doors, all the panels, so everything was dry and ready to assemble back together. Now, once everything was painted and out of the booth, we ended up bringing the chassis to my workplace so we can sit the tub straight on the chassis on the brand new body mounts. So it was all bolted down, and we didn't have to handle it 3 times so we can prevent the scratching. Once the tub was on the chassis, I was starting to get pretty excited. It was actually starting to come together and into one vehicle. When the car got home, we got straight into it, starting to put it back together. It literally took us 3 weeks to put the whole car back together, assembled and driving. So one thing that I did learn from this build is that if you are doing this restoration and you are waiting on certain things, so if you're waiting for the sandblasters, you're waiting for rust repairs, waiting for paint, is to get everything else ready to go. So all your brackets, clean all your little dash knobs, all your steering box, your wiring, get everything ready to go. So when your car does come back from that particular job, so just say you're painting, everything is there, ready to assemble. You're not kind of slowly putting it together, grabbing something, restoring it, putting it on the vehicle, which I think slows the build down quite significantly. Basically, as you can see there in the videos, everything was ready to go and straight on. With the roof, I ended up lining it with a marine carpet. So there was a grey colour carpet that was at Bunnings. We applied it on with the contact cement, and that turned out really nice. It looks so good in the vehicle. Trying to find the factory roof lining was quite difficult, and anyone that does have it, it's quite expensive. Now, once that was all applied, and all the panels were on the vehicle, we ended up putting the roof on so we could try and clear some room in the shed. That was all bolted down with brand new seals that were purchased from City Racer. A lot of these parts were from City Racer. They're really good to deal with for anyone looking for FJ40 parts. Everything is on the website. The shipping's a little bit because obviously I'm in Australia and they're in America, but everything is there. So you just do one big price up, make sure you've got everything on that list and send it over. All the gasket seals, rubber door seals, everything was really good quality, which I found. Once the roof was on, it was a matter of getting into it. So we finished putting all the dash in, we put all the doors and door cards back together. We wanted to get all the wiring, fuel lines and everything in the vehicle prior to putting all the panels on. Less chance of scratching the car. Now, any panel that was installed metal to metal, which was factory back in the day, was actually changed. So we've installed rubber in between every single panel so we can stop or prevent that from any rust or scratching later down the track. So for anyone that buys this in the future, they know they've got themselves a really good car. Well, there you have it, guys. That is the end of the FJ40 restoration series. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a massive achievement to get this car from where it was to now in under 12 months. I'm gobsmacked. It's more than I could ever ask. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Uncle Steve and the old man, Angry Dad, for putting in a huge amount of hours while I was at work to get this car where it is today. I want to say a huge thank you to my work, Lawrence, for supplying me with the facility for the sandblasting and the painting. Thank you very much, and everyone else that's helped in between. Now, if you like this sort of content, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. We're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Of course, for you guys, you're going to keep up to date with all the builds. There's going to be more restorations, more adventure on the channel Angry Mack. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.